is organizational stress the predominant stressor? How can organizational stress be remedied in public safety professions?
In essence, operational stressors, which are the things people sign up for in the job. So the reality is like responding to a call for service, responding to a critical incident or adverse event. People are trained and ready for that. The organizational stressors are all added on. There's the interpersonal challenges with colleagues, with management. It's the taxingness of the shift work. It's all those other things that make the job very complicated, the burden of paperwork and administrative processes. And what's really unfortunate, but fortunate at the same time, is we can do something about organizational stress. We can do a lot to remedy it if we understand that context well and understand sort of the context behind sort of why we see the mental health prevalence that we do. So if we can understand the context, we can understand those organizational stressors, we can make changes that should lighten a person's load. It's going to be complicated, and it really requires, a lens to self and a lens to the organization, and to recognize where the challenges are, and some difficult decisions will have to be made about what's there. Like if we look at something as simple as paperwork, you have in policing a motor vehicle accident, you'll have 14 different types of forms to fill out. There's no reason why we can't streamline it and not have to repeat information in different forms and different things. And if we can reduce that paperwork burden, we can reduce some of the stress, because people spend so much time doing the paperwork. So, and when we look at it, if we look at shifts, different shifts work better for people than other shifts. So we can find ways to streamline when people are working so they can benefit from those mental health days and those days off without the stressors tied to it. And we can do things about leadership. We can do things about interpersonal conflict. We can also use trauma-informed lens. When you're looking at PSP, trauma is real, and people respond to trauma in different ways. So sometimes you'll see a disgruntled police officer, a correctional officer, a paramedic, or firefighter, a public safety communicator. And we need to recognize they're not disgruntled because of their personality. That's a trauma response. And if we can be more sympathetic and understanding to that and keep that trauma-informed lens, not just to the victims or the people who are calling for services, but also to each other, I think it creates a stronger environment.
How can researchers collaborate with PSP and PSP leadership to improve health?
I don't think it's difficult. I work in correctional services, and many people will tell you that there's big barriers towards doing research with prisons and doing research in that. But I work with all the provinces and territories pretty well, and I work with CSC, the federal. And I think what it takes is honesty, transparency, and actually caring about what you're doing, to be more focused on helping the people you're there to help than any other reality. And if you do that and you're genuine, I actually learned from prisoners and doing research with prisoners, all we have is our word. And if we stand behind our word and we stay true to our cause and avoid all the politics and other stuff that happens, but just maintain our focus on making an impact, I think we can work with success always. PSP is like every organization. As an academic in the university, there are those same nuances, and it's a hierarchy in some ways, etc. It's the exact same thing, so respect it. And maybe what can also help is appreciative inquiry. So taking a lens where you appreciate that people did things because they're well-intended, and sometimes there's adverse consequences of every action. So instead of trying to kind of not be supportive of what's there, appreciate why it's there and look at ways that you can make change to improve what's there.
How can we make research relevant for PSP?
One, we have to find ways of getting our information out in ways that are accessible. So sometimes some of our academic standards aren't really what people want to be reading. Like sometimes they're really scientific papers. Like we know ourselves, even when I write them, they're not page turners. So we need to make it accessible, and it has to be practical and applied. So really our discussion when we explain everything and we make recommendations, making manageable recommendations that are actually doable, that understand the occupational nuance and the structures of the organization, can make change. So we have to really get informed and immerse ourselves in what we're doing so we understand what we can do to make an impact. And we can't put out you have a lack of resources and financial resources. You can't make suggestions for things that you need tons of money to do. You have to work within the limitations of what's there and find ways to make incremental change.